Rich and famous. Tonight we have Socka Count and Messenger Reveals. We're going to have a nice little discussion about the existence of God, that being the Christian God. So I'm joined here by John Peterson. Y'all probably know him from the Nakasuchi Raging Atheist channel. So he is going to be here co-modding, which here means I'm just going to kind of walk away every so often. And if things go off the rails, John will say something. So other than that, this is kind of a no holds bar. Like these are two grown men. But if they start, throwing shit at each other, we're going to watch it for a few seconds and then say something. So, other than that, feel free to introduce yourself, Messenger, then Soccer. But yeah,
just real quick before they do, let me just say that both of these gentlemen have the ability to talk at length. So I would say that, like Drag said, it's no holds barred, but try and go back and forth as much as possible. And, if you have to, explain something or you're making a point that's multifaceted, maybe you might want to stop after a few bullet points and give your interlocutor a chance to respond before it turns into a gish gallop.
Are you doing that just to trigger me?
Yeah. Yeah. You just asked me about that, the way I say that yesterday. So come on, introduce yourselves. Go ahead, Messenger.
All right, cool. I'm the Messenger. I run a channel called The Messenger Reveals. It's a theistic channel. I do believe in Jesus. I do believe in God. I'm sure we'll get into the reasons why I do so. I do not consider myself a Christian. I guess the best thing you can call me is a theist who does follow the Abrahamic God. But my views on theology are a little bit different than the norm. So I'll turn it over to Socka.
Yeah, I am a retired, serious YouTube content creator. Now I just got to engage in discussions here. Theology and philosophy are just hobbies of mine. I enjoy the discussions, and it's whenever you come across somebody like Messenger Reveals, who's got kind of like a different spin on their theological views. It's always kind of interesting to kind of dive into them. And so that's what we're kind of hoping to get at today.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Drake.
Yep. So let's start off with the very basic premise of Messenger kind of defining his version of God through his unique perspective, and then get into the rebuttal from that, Socka, and then
Sure. I'm a former, quote, Christian. I believed in probably mainstream modern day Christianity for several years, just probably no different than atheists and agnostics who were once Christians and changed their belief system after a period of time. Mine was more, the transformation really happened based on revelation or vision that I had in regard to human behavior, how and why we are the way we are, and really used that as a foundational framework to put things to the test. And, I pushed it up against philosophy, I pushed it up against psychology, pushed it up against clinical counseling, pushed it up against many different religions around the world, not just Christianity. And whatever I pushed it up against, those other, viewpoints or worldviews had faults, had failures, didn't answer certain questions. The one thing I pushed it up against that didn't fail in my viewpoint, and I was trying to get my viewpoint to fail, was the teachings of Jesus, and that he was the one individual in his teachings, whether it be his parables or his gospel, to that this truth that I had about how and why we were the way that we were, it stood the test. He was the one that stood the test, according to people who wrote about or quoted him, or wrote that they walked with him and the things that he did. So I guess my foundation of really what do I believe and why do I hold it to be true is because that was the one entity that didn't fail or falter, was him.
Yeah, so just trying to unpack all this. Now it's
sure.
You're starting off like that. You have this theological view, this view about a concept of God, okay, and you try to say that this is a different concept, that you have like different there's different parts of this that you're following that are unconventional to more traditional or mainstream Christianity. But I think one of the points I want to start off with is that when we're talking about a God here, what are we talking about? What kind of being is this? Are we talking about some type of supernatural, timeless, spaceless, transcendental being?
Well, I would say that the true answer is I'm agnostic. I don't know for sure. What I believe and hold to be true is that it's a supreme being that created us, Homo sapien, in his image and likeness. How he did this, I have speculative, guesses, just like people who are evolutionists have speculative guesses how, different species of hominid, evolved one from another. So I don't necessarily know if he's supernatural or if he is a flesh and blood being like us. I know that he has some level of matter for him to create us in his physical image and likeness, and gave us the rule and authority and dominion over this planet.
Well, I mean, you've covered like a wide ground with this, obviously now.
Sure.
Because
if you like to narrow it, have something specific.
Well, it's the explanation that you just gave allows for things like humans being some type of test tube experiment from some type of alien race, alien species that create this. Do you believe that that's a possibility?
It could be possible, yes. I mean,
would you still call that a god?
Yes.
But why? Like, what kind of power authority does somebody have for just conducting a science experiment on something? Like how does something being created in that way give it dominion over a planet, over the other life on that planet?
Well, I think it's the thing that originated life, intelligent life, as in us, over a period of time on this planet. So whatever supreme being, and that's what I see God as being defined as, if we're a human being that has flaws and imperfections based on our biological, cognitive, experiential, and emotional nature, and he's a supreme being, meaning a perfected nature of that I think human beings are attempting to attain themselves over a period of time, and that's our goal, is to become perfected in the ways that he in the origin of us was perfected.
What does it mean for something to be a perfect being? Like, are we talking about something that's perfectly good, perfectly moral?
It's hard to say something's perfectly moral when morals and ethics are very subjective in their nature.
I'm asking you, like,
no, and I'm giving you my answer.
Perfect. I gave a couple examples. If that's not it, but so if it's not,
no, something that's perfect is something
what's the perfection part.
Well, I realize that when human beings make mistakes, do wrong, have problems, have failures, have shortcomings, treat each other poorly, they're due to imperfections within their biological, cognitive, experiential, or emotional nature. Well, I see God more so as a being that's perfect in his nature, cannot fail, cannot do wrong, cannot commit a crime, cannot make mistakes. So that when we have these things that are imperfect within us, they're just flaws and imperfections that either need to be healed, be repaired, or matured through knowledge and information that we lack ahead of time. Like, if we're ignorant about something, we can make mistakes. Or if we have biological flaws in our brains, we can make mistakes. If we have a unhealthy perspective or belief system, we can make mistakes. If we get our emotions intensified in non-life-threatening situations, we can make mistakes.
So it's interesting because you gave some examples there of what this perfect being would be, and it had to do a lot with interactions that it had with other people. Things that would commonly fall into the category of ethics. You brought up examples like stealing, for example. Now, but then you've also said that this is that ethics and morality are these two subjective topics. How can there exist a being that encompasses some type of perfect ethical viewpoint if ethics just results down to some type of subjective analysis of something?
Well, I think as human beings, or intelligible human beings that have any level of social interaction with one another and language to be able to articulate it, we have an idea of what, as a norm or as a whole, we hold to be true or valuable or right or wrong. And certainly there's going to be differences based on upbringing, based on biological intelligence or lack thereof. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into determining how each human being is the way they are individually and uniquely. So
right.
when
So what qualities have to be stripped from a human for them to have this type of perfect cognition? Like, can they not be experience? Could they not be part of any type of larger culture? Do they have to have? I mean, it just begs the question to say that they have a perfect upbringing, because then the question would be asked, well, what is it so that about their upbringing that's perfect? You know, like you're telling me all the things, all the ways that something would not be perfect. You know, all the things that might have a factor on this. But we're not really diving into what does it mean for this being to be perfect. You know, you're comparing it to this kind of analysis of humans, and you're drawing kind of the faults that humans can have. You know, but if that's really what you're positing here, then you're positing that this perfect being could not be part of a culture, it couldn't be influenced by its upbringing. Like, what is it about this being, again, that makes it perfect?
That it doesn't make mistakes, that it's flawless in its existence, in its nature, in its being, which means that it would be
is it omniscient?
No, probably
How
not.
could it not make mistakes then? I mean, the only way that you could avoid making mistakes is if you had all knowledge of what the outcomes of those things would be. So you'd happen to be positing some type of omniscient being. Like mistakes is just a matter of learning.
I don't think so because something doesn't have to necessarily be omniscient to not make mistakes. Because
do you agree from our mistakes?
Say that again.
Do we learn from our mistakes?
Largely no, but human beings.
You don't think that we learn from our mistakes at all?
No, I think that human beings learn that they are mistakes and then feel bad about those mistakes and then try to act out and behave in a way that isn't mistake driven without actually addressing the real determinants in their inner being that cause those mistakes. So when you sit there and say, do we learn from our mistakes? My answer is for most human beings, no. And do they have an ability to, if they understand some of the concepts that I do about human behavior? Absolutely.
It wasn't for mistakes. How do we come across? How do we discover new things about the world? We don't hit things perfect the very first time.
Well, I mean, obviously through information, experience, and putting things to the test.
Experience, could be just almost a synonym for mistakes at this point in time as well.
Well, no, because we hold on to both semantic and episodic memories that both influence the way that we think and reason, therefore affect the way that we feel, have an effect on our biochemistry, and then therefore we produce and act and behave the way that we do. So it all matters, and all our inner individual. I mean, there's hundreds of determinants that drive our actions, behaviors, choices, and decisions. And people's lack thereof knowledge in terms of what those determinants are or why they try to just act the right way rather than addressing, again, the inner things within our being that make those things imperfect, or why we continue to make mistakes or repeat poor behaviors that we do.
In other words, learn from our mistakes.
Yeah. So,
no, not necessarily, because
well, that's what you're saying at this point in time. Like the question we're asking here is, how do we, how is it that something can learn? How is it that something can change? Is it something that can be perfect? And you said something that is free of mistakes would be something that you would describe as perfect. Which, okay, that's fine. I can say that, yeah, technically something that is without flaw, without mistakes would be perfect. But the only way that we can point to any type of sentient agent as something that is perfect, that's something that is incapable of making mistakes, would be to point to something that knows what all the factors would be that would produce a desirable outcome, the outcome free of any error. But so you'd have to be talking about an omniscient being at this point in time.
I don't think so. I mean, from your perspective or from a Christian perspective, perhaps, but not from mine, because let me finish. How can I be so arrogant or acting insightful beyond my own understanding and knowledge of sit there and saying that whatever created us is all knowing, all powerful? I don't know. I know that it's more powerful than us, and it's perfect in its being and nature, because if I have an understanding and concept about human behavior that allows me to have unconditional understanding, unconditional empathy, unconditional forgiveness, therefore allow me to unconditionally heal instantly in any given moment, and I look around at other human beings who have an inability to do that because of the determinants and understanding that they have, it leads me to say something still has more than what I have that's perfect in its nature, especially for the imperfections that I still have and that I continuously work on within myself. But when you say you just learn from your mistakes, you don't learn because you made a mistake and you call it a mistake. You learn because you seek understanding to the determinants that caused those things within you.
Yeah, but what you're saying then is that in order for you to do something flawlessly, perfectly for the first time, you'd have to have all knowledge of all the determinants that could possibly go into a situation to produce the most desirable outcome. And so essentially what you're saying is you're talking about an omniscient being. Like you might not want to call it an omniscient being, but in order to get to the characteristics that you're trying to describe through your perfect being analogy here, you would have to be describing a being that would be omniscient. Because only a being that is omniscient would be a being that's incapable of making a mistake.
Okay. But then it would get into, well, God created human beings and put them on a planet, and he put a bunch of imperfect people on a planet and left them to sit there and fend for themselves. So why would he do such a thing? And then it gets into morality and it gets into all these things. But if he's creating us from a beginning and origin to have the ability and opportunity to become perfected for a period of time, it doesn't make him imperfect because he chose to give life to this planet.
Yeah, but the only way that we can become perfect over time would be also to appeal to omniscience as well. We're never going to get to a stage of perfection.
We should appeal to omniscience, and probably the easiest path to that is artificial intelligence.
You think that artificial intelligence is omniscient?
I think not right now. No, they don't have an algorithm to sit there and put together a true AI that would resemble and embody our image and likeness and potential. But I believe that when somebody puts an algorithm together that allows a limitless machine to function as a human being, we basically and essentially created God in an artificial intelligence way.
So as soon as you have a limitless machine, then that machine would also have the characteristics of God. Absolutely. So you think that an omniscient being, okay, absent of any influence whatsoever, would always make the right choice? They'd be perfect?
I believe that I don't know how quick it would take them to attain perfection, but they would get there a lot quicker than a human being.
Would they be morally perfect as well?
I think that's what perfect means.
Okay, so a machine would be morally perfect. A machine with absolute...
You realize the terms of morals and ethics is so subjective to our imperfect humanistic viewpoint. Like even the way that
we're not talking about our humanistic viewpoint right here. I'm asking you whether or not an artificial intelligence that you believe could possibly exist, once you had an artificial intelligent being that was completely omniscient and could not make a mistake, you think that being would be morally perfect, as in that being could not make an immoral action?
I believe it would surpass us. Yes.
Okay. So what would this machine? Where would this machine derive its values from?
If that's what God already is, and we're just
I'm asking you, what would this machine derive its values from?
From the algorithm for how we are able to evolve as a species. It would have complete knowledge and understanding of how and why we function in the way that we do. Once you understand those things, you start to look at the world very differently. When you really have a true framework in understanding how and why people do what they do, it eliminates all those negative emotions that you have towards other people when they do wrong things.
So because you could understand that people make mistakes, you can forgive people for all the mistakes that they make?
100%.
Okay.
That's what I mean by when I sit there and talk about unconditional cognitive and emotional empathy, when I talk about unconditional forgiveness, yes, I'm talking exactly about that. I've achieved that as a human being.
You've achieved this?
I've claimed that for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So I'm saying if I can do it as an imperfect human being, I believe most people could do it. And I say most because, I think there's some people out there in the world, obviously, that don't have the intellectual capacity because they have, brain damage, or they're born with, minds that don't work in a normal or healthy function. So there's obviously going to be some human beings that will have an inability to do it. But I think pretty much anybody with average intellect or above could learn these concepts and become perfected in their inner being in those ways.
So I find it interesting, just in relation to the nature of this discussion. It stemmed from you being in the external chat, making a claim that I am too much of a coward to engage with you, although that you've never presented an opportunity to engage with you. You called me a coward because I wouldn't engage with you, and then when I said, but I have engaged with you, you said, but it's because I'm drunk all the time. And
you're taking things out of context. I made a comment saying that we've never had an interaction. We've had 2 interactions in the past where I was drinking before you came into them. I don't know if you guys knew or not, but I was, because I watched them on replay and followed of how I couldn't follow a conversation very well during those times, and was like, face palming myself. Mm-hmm. But one of the positive things, and I'll get back to your comments on when you said I called you a coward, but when you were in,
I'm just saying that this doesn't seem like the type of behavior that somebody who is enlightened in their moral thinking of how people act. It seems more like you were, trying to goad a conversation out of some type of maybe a deficiency in your ego caused by our past interactions.
Why would you assume that it has to do with ego?
The way you're posturing, obviously in the external chat, the way that you've been chasing me around from hangout to hangout, talking about things like, where I get my information from. Although you're asserting things like that, the stuff that I get is from Wikipedia, when really, no, it's just my study of, just philosophy, which doesn't just come from Wikipedia. In fact, it rarely comes from Wikipedia. So that type of posturing, that type of goading, that type of kind of really antagonistic attitude does not seem to be what I would expect from somebody who would claim to have the level of enlightenment that you have. It just feels weird that you would actually make that claim.
Well, maybe I understand human behavior well enough to be able to engage in a conversation, and here we are having that conversation. So obviously, whatever my intent was,
you engage. Well, I mean, you could have just asked. I've also, if you know anything about human behavior,
I engaged with you on Discord, and you chose.
Hold on. So, if you know anything about human behavior, you would know that I'm readily available in Discord, in Naka's rooms, in Drake's rooms to have a conversation. Anybody can have a conversation. John finds me 2 times a day conversation. Is that right, John?
Well, this has nothing to do with John. This has to do with you and I.
Yes.
You purposefully not made yourself available, even though you're claiming that you have. I think you're being disingenuous. No, you're being disingenuous.
No, I'm not. I think that any single person that has ever had an interaction with me knows that I'm readily available. You can message me on Discord. You can message me.
You being readily available for other people doesn't mean you were readily available for me, and I think you're being disingenuous based on conversations that we had in Discord.
Well, you might think that, but that's again, you're wrong about that.
Hey, let me step in here just real quick, because you guys are kind of talking over one another, and let me just say I can recall off the top of my head, a few times when you and Socka interacted in different streams, and I'm not picking on you, Messenger, but I'm just curious, how many times have you ever DM'd Socka or went over to Drag's server looking for him, or tried to email him, or maybe got a hold of Naka or me and said, hey, can you email Socka or DM him? I want to have a conversation with him.
I haven't reached out to you. I reached out to him.
You reached out to Socka himself?
Correct. I have a DM list of all of our conversations. I screenshotted them in case he goes back in and deletes them. So I have the whole conversation that he and I had in Discord, to where he avoided going live and having this conversation that we were having in Discord.
Oh, come on. That's a lie. You know that's a lie.
Well, how about if
you want to bring up that conversation, that's fine. That conversation started off. Yeah, sure, screenshot. Yeah, that conversation started off with me making a comment about something that Messenger had said, where he said, he asked the question, how do you know what you don't know? And I pointed out why that's just a deepity. It's a nonsensical question.
It isn't a nonsensical question, because you just didn't understand.
And I explained it to him within your framework from a couple. Hold on a second. Hold on.
No, because you're just going to punch.
So I explained to him in a couple different ways why that's kind of a nonsensical question.
You
and
didn't
then what
get
happened?
Messenger, hold on. Let him take 90 seconds and make his point, and then you can respond.
So then what happened was that it got to the point that he started getting very, very antagonistic with me.
No, not at all.
So I was asking him. I was asking. Hold on, hey,
continues to be
listen, Mr. Enlightened. Stop for a second. Let me finish my story.
I'm interrupting you because you're lying to the audience.
But Messenger, we agreed we weren't going to do this. And the thing is when you guys talk over one another, it sounds like a garbled mess to the people who are trying to watch right now. So just let him finish his point. I won't let him go on, and filibuster you, and then you can respond. But if you interrupt him every half sentence, we're never going to get anywhere. I mean, and the same, holds for Socka. Don't interrupt Messenger when he gets his turn. So go ahead, Socka.
Sure. Yeah. So then what happened was he started getting very antagonistic with me. I was asking him what his problem was, why he was doing this, why he would resort, to these type of behaviors, these tactics. And then he's made a comment about how that he's just waiting for me to say something of substance. And I responded, well, that's fine, whatever. Like, I'm still waiting for you to make a point. I can't remember exactly what my reply to that was. And then what proceeded was 3 days of Messenger reveals, responding to me with every single time that I would type something with the words "still waiting, still waiting, still waiting." When I tried to bring up coherent points, when I tried to, points that was relative to the discussion we were having, he was saying "still waiting, still waiting." Essentially, he took up the argument style of what you'd expect from a 6-year-old, to close off that conversation.
All right. Well, then go ahead and go ahead and respond to that, Messenger. And I just when you respond, could you touch on this point too? Is if you guys had a days-long discussion in DMs, that doesn't constitute him making himself available to have a conversation with you?
No, because he was just making personal attacks because he had nothing of substance really to say. When I reached out to him, I asked him, why did you believe the comment that I made of, how do you know what you don't know? Because it's a question that's supposed to spark somebody to be curious, somebody to go, I really don't know until I've learned something new. And it's worked many, many times when I was a therapist. And we use that as a phrase to open up people to new ideas and new thinking. So when he hears, I think it was the Quentin kid who said, well, yeah, Messenger asked me how I knew what I didn't know. And then Socka was like, well, that's a stupid question. So I was like, I asked him in DM. I didn't go out live. I didn't make it public. I said, why did you think this was stupid? I said, if you have a better way for me to phrase this sentence to still get the same result, I'm all ears. He offered nothing throughout our DM interaction, nothing whatsoever.
That's a lie, actually, right there.
So there's the interruption again, right there. So again, we talked about interruptions, and you have an inability to.
Well, here you're right, Master. But don't
say that you're right.
Well, no, I'm saying you're right. I said you're right, but you did pause, take breath, and perhaps you thought you were through. But go ahead and finish your point.
So the message started, and it didn't go over 3 days. It went over a week with him making insults, and me just replying, still waiting. I wrote something to him like, I said, and this is a direct quote. I said, now you're just shotgun blasting again, hoping to hit something. You still haven't figured out that I'm impervious to your nonsensical claims. Like I said earlier, that's about all you got. I get it. Let me know when you've got something valuable to share. He wrote, you're also impervious to correction about stupid things you say, smiley face. I said, I'm still waiting. He says, you can wait as long as you need. Still around playing civilization all day, or sitting around playing civilization all day isn't going to make your stupid statements any better. LMAO, smiley face. I wrote, still waiting. He said, see, I don't even wait for you to say something valuable. Like most people, I have given up on you ever having something meaningful to say. I wrote, still waiting.
I think it's interesting.
So he writes right here. No, you see, here's the interruption, because he knows now he's being.
Hold on a second.
Don't let him interrupt.
I just want to know why he's starting there in the conversation.
So there
it's really interesting that he's chosen to start there. Because actually, let's get to the point. I have an idea. Let's actually start off.
Oh, somebody's embarrassed and says, "I have an idea." John, shut him up.
So let's you know what, Messenger? I'm sorry, but you're just being dishonest right now.
I'm reading your
Okay.
quotes that you said that you were saying that I said still waiting because you were saying something
so let's,
meaningful, and I'm embarrassing you because
are
you
you
said
a
stupid
messenger?
points.
Messenger.
You acted like a child.
Hey, messenger.
You're the person
Okay, listen.
in control of his emotions.
You're getting angry
I'm not
right
upset.
now. Okay.
I'm not upset
And I
at
don't know
all.
why you're
I'm
getting
just talking
angry.
over you.
Okay.
You can make all the assertions you
So
want. I'm talking over you because you're being
let's start this off again.
disingenuous.
Okay.
Let's start over without lies. That's a good idea.
So messenger starts off with, we need to discuss how you think that how do you know that you know question is stupid. Let's do this live sometime. We never spoke, debated when I was not drinking. So let's do this. I responded with, well, let me give you a brief synopsis. Okay. And so I gave him an example. I know how much money is in my bank account. That is a statement where I express a knowledge claim about my bank account. If I say that I know how much money is in my bank account, that is a statement where I express a knowledge claim about having a knowledge claim. So I can know that I can hold a knowledge claim about something. Now, I don't know how much money is in your bank account. That is a statement where I express a lack of knowledge about your bank account. If I say that I know that I don't know how much money is in your bank account, that's a statement where I express knowledge about not having a knowledge claim. So in some examples, it's easy for us to know that what we don't know, because we know what knowledge claims we don't actually have. Now, the part that Messenger is missing in all this is that one of the things that he's asking for is like, how do we know the unknown? Okay, like how, if his question is about how do we find out about the stuff that we don't know, the stuff that's currently unknown out there. Now that's an interesting question that we can get into. Okay, but it's just, if you try to simplify it into, how do we know what we don't know? Well, I mean, you can get really, bogged down in the language of that question. So he does respond. He says, I'm about better phrasing. The problem is just accepting the philosophical definition of knowledge and belief. A more clarifying definition is that beliefs are things that you hold yet to be true, yet you cannot empirically prove them. So call them assumed truths, whereas knowledge is the things that you can hold to be true and can empirically prove them. Now, he goes on there, and I said, well, the problem with this is by your own definitions, you're asking, how do you hold that to be true empirically, which you not hold to be true empirically? So it doesn't really matter what the definition is. You're just asking, how is A not A? So it's just like, you're just asking, why is this thing not a contradiction? It doesn't make sense. And so then, you come back to this and you say, you try to defend this. You're trying to like, well, I'm just trying to like ask this question. I'm trying to, start up this discussion, trying to get this stuff here. And I responded, well, the problem is you're asking an epistemologically phrased question, but you're using an understanding of, but no understanding of epistemology. If you want to have a psychological discussion, well, don't ask philosophical questions. And then he says, I disagree with your assertion.
Let's hold up there for a second, because you have been going on quite a bit. I know it's quite a long thread.
But no, but hold on one more second, John. Okay, because this is just the crux of it here, is that the point is that he asked me for a better phrasing, and essentially what I said was, don't try to do bumper sticker phrasing. Like if you want to have a question that's that starts off, we're trying to understand how somebody can open up in a conversation and, kind of exploring the things that they don't know, that's fine. But there's other ways to do that than asking a question phrased in that way. And that was the answer to my question. Now, at this point in time, this is where Messenger actually starts reading the messages. This is where, he starts, going after me, saying that you have nothing to contribute. You have all this other stuff. And I just say, well, you know what, fine. That's I'm just waiting for you to take correction. If you want to know why I said that he was impervious to correction or any type of counter opinion whatsoever, well, that's why. Because the part of the discussion that Messenger left out here was the several days of back and forth that we had, where I was actually explaining why I didn't think that was a good question and better ways that he can do it.
All right,
but you notice what he did was all he did was he wanted to do the part where he's doing the still waiting part.
Let's go to him, and I was going to let him respond, but I was going to ask him this question. Now, it seems to me, Messenger, that when you brought the chat up and started reading it, you started at the point where everything had devolved. The first part of it that Socka just read, I heard substantive points out of both of you, and then at some point, for whatever reason, probably different reasons in each one of your minds, it devolved into like a snark contest. And you seem to start reading the thread where it turned into like a snarky kind of back and forth. Like is there a reason why you started at that point in the conversation? And go ahead and give your answer and then give your rebuttal, and you can certainly take up to 4 or 5 minutes, because Socka just did so.
Well, I could go anywhere from probably the 1/3 point to the end of the conversation where it was devolved over a period of time. And it wasn't from me attacking him. I was calling him out on his bullshit. And he was basically starting to make personal
I wasn't
attacks.
attacking him. I was calling him out on bullshit.
Here's the interruption. So he has an inability to
I'm
hear
sorry,
my
but
side
you
of it.
start,
Oh, so when I tell you you're
start off with a
disingenuous as you're
lie.
talking, you want me to
Hey,
hear you
was that
out.
I
Hey,
lie in anything I said.
But Socka, you know I love you, man. But he sat there silent for a good at least 4 minutes while you were talking. So at least give him
because
that.
I didn't lie.
Well, no, I understand that.
If I had lied as anything I said, I would expect something.
But here's the thing. If you don't get to point out that he lied in 4 minutes, will that change anything? Just jot down all the lies.
Want people to know that what he's doing is lying.
Well,
like,
right,
this is the problem.
and you'll be able to
people to know what Socka's doing is disingenuous,
and you'll be able to rebut him. Let him tell what he wants to tell, and everything that's wrong, you can rebut it when he gets done. But
here's the beautiful thing. I'm going to do a response video to that entire Discord thread so that everybody can make their own judgments. And I encourage Socka to do it from his perspective and point of view, and then people can determine for themselves. Then people can determine for themselves, reading the text as I'm giving my interpretation from it, and he can read it from the text and give his interpretation of it, who you believe. But I started with the stuff.
I don't actually need to do that.
I mean,
I didn't say you did. I'm still talking. I'm not done.
Yeah,
So
but
now
I don't
I'm getting
have
into
to do an interpretation. I think the text reads
answering John.
Right.
Well, you're like Christian.
I mean, Socka, you're not going to let him. You're not going to let him finish. You're not.
He has an inability to.
I mean, it's just the thing is,
this is
though.
The same thing he was doing to me.
One thing I would, right, but one thing I would say too is, like you just said, you say to him, "We'll make your video too." The fact of the matter is, and I know both of you pretty well, Socka doesn't give a fuck about it. Like, you care more about.
Otherwise, he would be interrupting me.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is you seem to care about this more than he does. Socka just likes to come on. Socka just likes to come. Well, I'm just making an observation. Socka likes to come online and go on to Hangouts and have discussions that sometimes turn into arguments. But after it's over, I from what I know, he puts very little thought into it afterwards. He would have never thought to have this discussion with you if you weren't the one that brought it up and wanted to have it. I'm just saying how I saw it, but go ahead and.
I mean, we're going to have your opinion every 5 seconds. I don't.
No, it's not every 5 seconds. I jumped in to let you have your time, and I was just.
But that's what I'm trying to say is, like, hold him off, let me speak, and then if I'm interrupting him, hold me off and let him speak.
Right, and to hold him off, I have to jump in and say something because I have no control over any mute buttons or anything.
All right, so how about this? I'm going to mute the other person when the other person is talking, right? So we're going to spend the next probably 10 minutes.
I don't think that's necessary, Drake. I just think that it would be best if Messenger would just be honest in this discourse instead of lying through his teeth.
No, I'm not lying, because lying would be intentionally saying something untrue with the purpose to deceive. I'm not doing that. You can say I'm saying something untrue, but I'm certainly not lying.
This is why you need to put out.
That's why I said you're being disingenuous.
You want to put out a video with
what happened
your
in the conversation,
interpretation,
and you're trying to sit there and spin it that I was the one attacking you.
So how about this?
Like I said, just feel free to put the DMs out there. I don't need to put an interpretative spin on it. I don't need to paint a narrative. Any single person that could read that thread, and I'll tell you, I actually have shared that thread with a few people.
So
and their response was the same thing.
They thought you drug it and devolved it, and they were your people.
No, I don't think. Give me one name. Give me an example of somebody who gave it to.
Why would I want to give you a name?
Because you're lying right now.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not lying.
Okay, so how about this?
So go for it.
Why are we discussing the DMs? I thought we were supposed to be talking about the existence of God. Why was that even brought into the conversation?
Well, the problem is that he claims to be this enlightened person that knows human motivations now. But you can see just by his behavior here that he's just a normal person. There's nothing enlightened about Messenger. I'm not a perfect person, but this guy right here is just as flawed as any other person out there. Because I don't claim to be perfect. I have my own flaws.
No, you actually said
my behavior right now is just a mirror of Messenger himself.
You said in that thread, in that DM thread, that you were the poster child for mental well-being.
Is that he's exhibiting this behavior? He's trying to present himself as some type of authority here. Okay. And really, what he's doing is he's just demonstrating that He doesn't know anything.
Did you say that,
and I'm not just
Sasha?
talking about not knowing anything, just like the general kind of overall sense of knowing something. It's just that he's claiming to have knowledge about, you know, human interactions and what they do, but yet can't actually practice this himself.
All right, how about this? How about let's hold off on the private conversation because that just seems like shit.
I just got one response to it.
No.
Oh, so you're gonna let him drone out, but not let me have a response.
Okay, so what comment do you need to add? You said you're doing an entire video, right? So what comment are
he's
you going to add?
He just said, I'm not perfect, but in his DM thread, he specifically said, I'm the poster child for mental well-being.
Okay, that's cool. Awesome. So now that you said that, let's save this to the end of the conversation, right? Because it's just shit flinging at this point. Let's get back on topic.
Cool.
And make this less personal. So where you guys were the last time I remember was that you were describing certain traits. There you were going over the ontology of the deity that you seem to adhere to, or at least believe in to some degree. How about we get back on that and elucidate that a little bit better? How about that?
Sure. Who's starting?
So you've acknowledged that in order to reach the stage of perfection, you'd have to be omniscient. And you think
that was your assertion.
Well, that's what logically follows from the premises that you put out there. I mean, I'm sorry if you can't follow along with that. I'm sorry.
I follow it, but I disagree.
When you're talking about something that can't make mistakes, you're knowing something that knows, and you said this yourself, is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of little things that can affect any decision that somebody makes, that could make that mistake, wrong. That could, that they could. And there's 1,000 little things that can happen that could, cause somebody to lead to this mistake. That the only way for somebody to not make that mistake would be have all knowledge of all these factors that come into play that can only lead to the perfect outcome. When you're describing something as having all knowledge in respect to, the perfect outcome, you are describing something that is omniscient.
Go ahead, Messenger.
I don't think I'm describing something that's omniscient. That's your best and probably Christian's best understanding of what something omniscient would be. I don't think so, because you can't presume that something's all-knowing. All you can do is know that it knows enough to act in a perfect state of being. But does it have complete knowledge about all things external from itself? No, it just understands itself well and understands other humanoids or human beings or gods or angels like itself. That's what I mean by the ability to be perfect in its nature. Doesn't mean that it has all the answers about atoms and science and metaphysics and quantum mechanics. It doesn't know. I don't know if it knows everything or not, because I don't know everything. So I can't comprehend something outside of my own state of existence other than it's beyond where I'm at.
So you think that this thing has to have all knowledge of itself, and then all knowledge of the things that would impact the decisions that somebody else would make. All the causal factors that exist within the universe would have to, this thing would have to have knowledge of that to see how anything external of itself reacts. Okay, it's not just about the nature of people. There's other factors, because environment plays a huge role in changing our things like motivations. Environment can change our values. Environment can change how we approach problems, the experiences people have that you might not have direct access to, and all the things that led up to that experience. You'd have to have knowledge of all things. So
you're an expert with human behavior now?
I'm saying that for your theory to work, you'd have to be omniscient. Like, that's what I'm saying here. And I'm trying to point out that it's not just a matter of, knowing how people react, but it's all the things that, cause people to react, all the environmental factors, everything that would have to be part of the universe would have to be included in this.
No, it doesn't.
So technically, yes, you would have to be omniscient. Unless you're saying that environment plays no play in what affects people's behaviors. Unless you're saying
not
that
everything, Socka.
Well, I mean, is it a factor of it? Is it one of the 1,000 things that do affect it?
No, it's not one of the thousands of things.
So are you saying that no experience or no environment at all affects people's behavior?
What I'm saying is it's people's interpretations of the environment.
That the environment around people have no play on how it affects their behavior.
Once they understand themselves and they understand others, it doesn't impact them in the way that it impacts perhaps maybe you.
So the environment plays no play whatsoever.
Because you probably have the belief that other people are responsible for how you feel and how you behave, right?
No, not at all. I take more responsibility for my own emotions, which is why
So if somebody harmed a loved one in your life, it wouldn't trigger some level of intense emotions within you.
And that's a different question. So
No,
try to stay on topic. So you asked me who's responsible for my emotions. Okay. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for my emotions. What I choose to do with them. Okay.
So you're choosing
how I condition myself, how I react to things.
So you believe choice is an internal state of being. So you think choice is an internal thing, an internal state of being? Like you get to choose your emotions?
I think that I've been fortunate enough that I have been conditioned in a way that my emotions are pretty good. Yeah.
I'm asking you a specific question. Do you believe you get to choose how you feel?
I mean, I would say that probably on a quantum level, no. I mean, it's that like when we take a look at that, there is a certain deterministic nature of things, but I mean, there are positions that you can take a look at, like compatibilism. So even if free will just is an illusion, well, maybe there is some aspect of choice that is there in some type of compatibilistic framework. But that's still. Well, I'm not quite sure if there's complete choice.
But choice is not a determinant.
But I mean, But I'm saying like this is where we're talking about the environmental factors that come into this.
Environmental factors is an external stimulus. It's not your internal state of being. That's my whole point in this. And you don't understand human behavior well enough to know that. So when I sit there and object to things, when I object, no, I'm not done. When I object to things,
that I don't know human behavior,
because when I object to your viewpoint that environment affects the way that you act and behave, environment is just the stimulus. It's not the internal determinants within your being. There's a big difference.
I just think that it's weird that you think that environment doesn't come into play at all, considering that you gave examples.
I said it doesn't come into play with it. It's not a determinant. It's a stimulus. And there's a big difference between stimulus, determinants, and responses. And I'm trying to help you understand these things, but you seem to pontificate as if you're some expert in human behavior because you say, well, environment plays a factor.
See, now you're just going off on this, okay? The issue
I'm
here
going off on your ignorance. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Yes, that's see right there. That's the model of an enlightened person right there. I just want to point that out again.
You constantly interrupt. So here's the problem. So I have to talk over you.
The issue is that what we're talking about is that Messenger has already said that there are thousands of factors that come into what affects.
I never use the term factors, and I never use the term thousands.
You said there's thousands of things.
I said there's hundreds of determinants. Let's get to the point. I said there's hundreds of determinants that affect in our inner being, not stuff that's external from us, that determine how we act and behave, choose, and decide. That's what I said. And then you basically, I don't know if you're red herring,
what did you say? Say that one more time there. Okay, I didn't catch that part.
And then when I'm trying to finish a point,
I'm trying to. Can you go back? Can you go back to what you just said? I'm asking you to repeat something that you just said. You said so. How did you describe it? What are the factors that come into play?
I said I didn't say factors. So try to follow along this time. I said there's hundreds of determinants.
Okay, stop there. Okay, a determinant is a factor. Okay, a determinant is a factor that comes into play. If you want to change the word to determinant, it doesn't really matter. Okay, these words in the context of using right now could be synonymous. Okay. How is the environment? How is the environment? Not a factor. How is experience not a factor? How are these things not a factor?
Experiences are our experiential learning and thinking is an internal process, one that you don't understand.
I think that this is the part where I think we're talking past each other. Okay, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt here that we're trying to stay on the focus on this, is that in order to be perfect, okay, you said somebody who is perfect is somebody that does not make mistakes. In order to not make mistakes, you have to be
about determinants in yourselves.
All factors that come into play.
We're talking about the internal determinants within human beings because it's specific.
You really can't complain about interrupting if you keep on doing the same thing.
Because that they shouldn't be showing a definition on the screen of something we're not talking about. We're talking about specific determinants, which means
a determining agent or factor. I like that. That's nice. Okay, so anyway, it's a factor. Okay, so we get it. The determinant is a factor.
Because you think you already know something that you don't.
I'm trying to clarify your position. I'm trying to get clarity on this.
I'm trying to provide it. You can't shut up long enough to listen. I can teach you if you shut up.
Oh, I'm not quite sure what you can teach me. A second ago, you said that a determinant wasn't a factor.
Why don't you try to be a student for 5 minutes?
Goodness.
That's perhaps in a classroom.
Can you just calm down? You need to calm down for a second, okay?
I'm not upset.
You sound upset, okay?
That's your interpretation of it.
So the problem is that you have to have knowledge of all these factors, okay, including the determinants that will affect what the decision will make. That you can say that it's a mistake a decision that's made without mistake. Okay, so a perfect being would have to be omniscient. Okay, that just follows from what you're saying.
No, it doesn't.
All right. Yes, it does. It logically follows from that.
In your perspective.
It's not my perspective. When you have to have this level of knowledge,
imperfect understanding of human behavior that makes you assume that must be true. Just like everything that you hold to be true about your understanding of yourself comes from a philosophical viewpoint, not a psychological one, which actually studies the science of human behavior and mental thought process.
Well, I have high doubts about your level of education when it comes to this. But
you can doubt all you want. That has nothing to do with truth.
So within
you wouldn't have the ability to sit there and determine whether it was true or not.
You're having this. You seem to be like stuck at this point because like you want to describe something of having all this knowledge. All this knowledge of all these factors that come into play, but yet you're hesitant to use the word omniscient when you tie it to it.
I don't think all-knowing is a good description of God.
Pardon me?
I don't think omniscient is a good description of God.
Well, it's a description of this perfect being that you're talking about.
It's a description of your understanding of what you think the perfect being is that I'm representing.
It's not my understanding. I'm just relaying the understanding that you're putting out there in relation to this thing that has to have
only yours.
I mean, if you can't follow along with what logically follows what you're saying, then I don't know what the
real quick. Let me interject here. I just want to let the chat know because some people in there are asking for moderation. I'm just letting them go. It's going okay. They're not letting each other go on too long, and they're jumping in there, and it doesn't seem like they're really talking over each other that much. Just go on, Messenger. But I want to know: do you believe that your God has any omni traits?
Let me think, because there's four basic ones if I'm not misunderstanding what you're asking, which is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, and what's the last one I'm missing?
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. You're right. Yeah. So those are the four. Omnipresent, no.
But how does he learn anything about? How does he have knowledge of all these determinate factors?
Can I finish a point without?
Well, let's just address them one by one.
I know you want to dominate the conversation to act like you.
I'm wondering if we can address them one by one.
You're as bad as atheist rationale with your jumping in.
I'm asking a question. Let's go by them one by one.
You don't listen.
Yeah. Well, you don't listen. Hey, Socka. To be fair, I asked him if his God has any omni traits. There's only two of them left. Let him say what he thinks about those other two, and then you can respond.
Well, I just think it's weird though that he doesn't want to attack go at them one by one.
Well,
I mean that would be just a conversation.
I understand, but it's a very short thing.
Somebody who's an expert in human interactions and stuff would know this.
But you have enough of a intellect that you could respond to 2 points at the same time, can't you?
He wants to dominate the conversation.
But so anyway, you claim it's not, that your God is not omniscient, and you just ruled out what other one? You just ruled out omnipotence, or was it omnipresent? Omnipresence you ruled out. So is your God omnipotent, and is your God omnibenevolent? And give your answer on that. Let Socka respond.
I don't think God is omnipotent because I don't know enough about the universe to be able to compare the two. And omnibenevolent, it would be the only one that I would say, yeah, I could see that.
Let Socka respond now.
Okay, so again, like in order for some perfect being to have knowledge that they could not make a mistake, they'd have to be aware of all the factors that are in play. And the only way that you'd be aware of all these factors that are in play would be for them to be omnipresent. You couldn't know all the factors unless you could observe them all. So, I mean, again, like, the problem with Messenger Reveal's definition here is that he doesn't want to apply the omni traits to his God for some reason, or this concept of God that he's concocted. But he's but yet he still finds himself being forcing himself into the same position in the way that he has to talk about them.
What Socka should do when he's speaking is say, I believe this is true, because he speaks of it as it's a matter of fact, and it isn't, because he's offering opinion, and opinions are beliefs. It's the way that he thinks and reasons. So when he says it must be, he believes that it must be. And the audience needs to understand that so they don't get sucked into just ascribing of, well, he sounds intelligent, so therefore that seems reasonable to me. It must be true. And it just isn't. It's his belief. No different than I'm ascribing my beliefs from their beliefs and saying I know something when I know something.
So I just want to let people see that I gave him an entire chance to respond there. And what what you just did, Messenger, was that you did not offer any type of rebuttal or anything to it. All you did was that you just tried to, go after me and what I'm saying here, when all I'm repeating is just what logically follows from what you're putting out there. But that's fine. If you don't want to answer this, you can move on.
Your perspective,
that's fine.
Right? It logically follows from your perspective, correct?
Well, is logic different for you?
It's different for everybody.
Oh, okay. So
what?
You aren't coherent. Aren't you the one that says
you have
as long as it coherently, and I don't need all the evidence to support it? That seems strongly to be a belief.
Well, it just logically follows from what you're saying.
Well, it's logically within your biological, cognitive, experiential, and emotional framework. So that's how you reason.
What you're doing there is just you're going off of a mantra there that really doesn't actually add anything to the conversation. I'm asking you how it's possible for something to have no.
To speak better and articulate your words in a way so that people can understand that, hey, this is my opinion and not a factual statement.
So again, this is so we're talking about a being that knows everything, knows all environmental, all experiential, all personal details that can dictate or change how people interact with each other. But yet this thing is not omniscient. And then Correct. It also has knowledge of all things and all places and all the determining factors that are going to impact someone's changes and choices that they make. But this thing's also not omnipresent. So we have an all-knowing, non-omniscient, ever-present, omnipresent creature.
That sounds like a lot of word salad.
It's a contradiction. Like if we were to say that, if we were to try to define your God right now, you're defining your God as a contradiction.
You talk about knowing all places and called it omnipresent. Omnipresent is being all places, not knowing all places. So you don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, let me correct that. Okay, is what I said, that it knows all things because it knows all this stuff about all these details out there. And the only way that it does know all these things is because it has experience of being in all these places.
No, being all these places is like traveling between Italy and traveling to Michigan. But guess what? You could be in Michigan and Italy at the same time if you're omnipresent.
Right, and you'd have to be omnipresent to know all the deterministic factors that are happening at all places.
Why?
Well, because if you're not aware of some of the deterministic factors that might be happening in a separate location that are going to impact the decision that you're making, well, then you're going to be making a mistake because you don't have access to those deterministic factors. And therefore, you would not.
How are you going to be able to because you don't know what's going on in Italy?
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
How are you going to? If you're in Michigan, why would something going on in Italy have an impact on you in Michigan?
Okay, so if you have to be this being that cannot make a mistake, you would have to know all deterministic factors, including those factors that might be out of your purview, which means that there's factors that might be happening on the other side of the world that would impact the decision that you're making now.
Again, we're talking about interdeterminants.
Whatever you want to talk about.
I was talking to you about.
I'm sorry. Okay.
I was talking about interdeterminants. I was talking to you about interdeterminants within somebody's being that dictate action, behavior, choice, and decision for that person in that moment, not external stimulus.
Okay. Hey, Messenger, can I? Well, Messenger, just let me clarify. Say it.
Are you trying to help Socka out?
No. I'm trying to help you understand what he's saying so you can give him a response.
I know what he's saying. And it's
no. Here's the point you're missing. What he is saying is that you claim your God makes no mistakes. In order to be a being that makes no mistakes, you have to know what all the determinants would be in any action you're going to take.
That's not
To
true.
know, hold on. To know all the determinants in any action you're going to take to guarantee that you won't make a mistake, that means you have to be omniscient. Because look, you use the example of being, you give the example of being in Michigan and being in Italy at the same time. It's just like that old thing about if a butterfly flaps its wings on the other side of the world, 3 days later there's a hurricane, on the other side of the world. I mean, that's what Socka is saying. It's like you can say that I'm in Michigan and nothing in Italy can have an effect on me, but that's not necessarily true. And for all of those factors, that constitutes omniscience. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying.
So if you get punched in the face, are you making a mistake?
Now we're just talking to a different topic.
If you get punched in the face, you could be making, yes, you could have made a mistake if you get punched in the face.
Okay, because you could have, so it's potential, it's maybe. You're not committing to it. Because the bottom line is I'm not talking about how external things affect you in terms of if somebody drops a house on your head and you die, did you make a mistake because you should have known that the house was coming? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the actions, behaviors, and choices, and decisions that we choose to make. Are they mistakes or not? And if somebody dropped a house on your fucking head, nobody would say, John Peterson made a mistake. They would say, John was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And there's no way he could have known that that was going to occur. And John's absolved of any wrongdoing because the house fell on his head.
All right, but couldn't there have been?
No.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You addressed me, so just hold on. Couldn't I have made an unrelated mistake earlier that led me to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Then, in fact, it would have been caused by a mistake.
For a human being, potentially. For God, no.
He is omniscient.
No, he's not. If you guys believe in God and you believe he's omniscient, that's cool. I don't.
Okay. So moving on, maybe because he's not getting this.
These guys believe God's omniscient, according to this conversation. And they're trying to prove that God's omniscient.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to evaluate your understanding of this, okay? And like what we
you're not
wrote
listening
out
to my
here,
understanding. You're trying to sit there and make presumptions about what I believe.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'll wait until you're done again.
You're making presumptions about what I believe. That's what you're doing. You're trying to lead me to a path of saying, I believe God's omniscient, so that you can go on some long tirade of that's contradictory to it. And I don't think that. So let's skip it.
But yet you define him as omniscient.
Oh, darn. Socka can't move on.
Well, I mean, it just follows from your definition. Because what's really interesting is that. Okay, sorry. I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you to finish.
Yeah, because don't sit there and tell me what I am or not, because you're just making assertions that are untrue and there's no evidence to support what you're saying. You tried to sit there and spin it in a way because you need it to be true. You tried to do the same shit to Richard Mattson. You tried to do the same thing to him, because that's all you can do is straw man people or red herring them and take them off in a long tangent, because that's the only points you have. So let's move on from this.
Are you done? So the issue here is that you notice that he walked back his definition now. Okay, is that at one point in time, this thing had to know all the internal factors that were affecting them, as well as the external factors of the people that they were interacting with. Now, the problem was that in order for you to know the external factors of the people that you're interacting with, you'd have to have omniscience. You'd have to have omnipresence, and I pointed that out. And so what he's done now is, Messenger has walked it back to, well, no, you only need to know the internal factors to yourself. And that's it. So, okay, I guess that's the new definition that we're using for something to be a perfect being, is they only need to know what's happening inside them. That's it.
Messenger, he's throwing it to you.
Oh, I was talking about, and always have been, the inner determinants that dictate actions, behaviors, choices, and decisions. And because Socka misunderstood it, he referred to outside factors that have nothing to do with inner determinants. And when I told him that environments had nothing to do with inner determinants, he lost his mind.
Well, if we rewind back the tape, you would actually see that earlier on, he said that in order for somebody to make a perfect decision, because I have it actually written down on my notes here, that they'd have to be aware of all external factors.
They're
I'll wait for you to finish again.
I call them determinants. And I clarified it being inner determinants because you used the term loosely to mean external things, which is not what I meant. So I was trying to clarify it for you. And it wasn't backpedaling, it was trying to clarify it so that you wouldn't keep mentioning external factors.
You actually used the term external factors. You used external determinants. Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. You've been just saying.
Okay, because I wrote that down when you said it. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say that probably you just misspoke.
That's a possibility.
Okay, all right. So you think that just a perfect being just that is somebody that just knows themselves? Then is that what you're saying?
Well, I would say understands themselves and therefore understands others according to that same cognitive framework.
Okay, hold on a second. Stop there. Okay, understanding others. Okay, now we're putting an externalist standard on this again. Okay, do you believe that environment and experiences affect how you think internally?
Yes, experiences will change.
Stop there for a second. So then, if you believe that those are the criteria for you to know yourself, and you also have the understanding of other people, don't you have to understand their experiences and their environment?
Of course.
Okay, in order for you to know their experiences and their environment, wouldn't you need to know all the determinants or all the factors that went into play that they were exposed to?
No, you don't have to know all the specifics about it. You just understand that they did exist. So therefore, that's what cognitive and emotional empathy is for, which means you're attempting to understand why somebody's doing something based on those prior things that they've experienced, the prior information and knowledge that they've been given, what's going on with them biologically and physiologically, and therefore what's dictating their emotional or mental state of being in that moment of choice, decision, action, or behavior. You don't have to know what it is. You just realize something's dictating it. So therefore, you're not putting yourself in their shoes. You're trying to understand the perspective from their point of view.
So now the issue here, though, is that you don't know what those environmental factors are. You don't know what those experiential factors are. Okay?
No, and neither would God.
Pardon me?
Neither would God.
So it would be possible for God to make a mistake.
Not necessarily, because he's making the assumption in every single moment that something's driving it. So therefore, his judgments of things, his perspective of things realizes this human being or being, if there's another being other than us human beings, are doing the best they can in every given moment, that they couldn't do anything different than what they do.
So it's possible for God to make a mistake if he doesn't have all the access to the other person's experiences and environment.
Why would he be making a mistake? Because he didn't know. Because I don't know why my wife thinks and reasons the way she does sometimes. Doesn't mean I make a mistake toward her in relationship with her because I don't understand it. I just realize something's going on inside. So how am I making a mistake? How am I making a mistake?
So you can say things that could be hurtful.
No.
I mean, if you've never said anything to your wife accidentally that was hurtful?
I don't think so. I think purposely at times I have, but I don't think I've ever done it.
You purposely unintentionally?
Well, of course I've done things that were like that. I'm an imperfect human being and I behaved poorly. I'm responsible for that, not her.
Okay. All right. So is it possible for God to unintentionally hurt somebody?
I would say, yes, it's possible for God to unintentionally hurt somebody because people have poor perceptions about what God may or may not be doing. So therefore, people get hurt all the time.
Specifically about God. Okay. Yeah, specifically about God.
Yes,
God
I believe
can make mistakes.
No, it's not making a mistake. I don't think it's making a mistake to unintentionally hurt somebody.
You don't think it's a mistake to unintentionally hurt somebody?
No, I don't.
What?
I would not call it making a mistake that you unintentionally hurt somebody.
What would you call it? Just like a oopsie?
No, I think that if you unintentionally hurt somebody, they have a shared responsibility for the hurt that they feel in that moment.
So if you unintentionally hurt somebody, it's their fault as well?
If you unintentionally hurt somebody, there's a shared responsibility for that hurt. Absolutely.
So if someone's mother dies, okay, and you haven't seen them in a couple weeks, and you walk up to them like, oh, hey, how's your mom? And they break down into tears. That's their fault?
They have the responsibility for their. You think that's the person's fault for bringing up mom that they didn't know about?
Well, I mean, you hurt them. You cause them
No,
sadness.
you don't hurt people. People allow you to hurt them, or they don't allow you to hurt them based on how they perceive other people.
Okay, so it's their fault for getting upset.
It's not about fault. I don't use words like fault and blame. I use words about like responsibility, which is what I've been saying.
So it's their mistake. It's their mistake for being sad.
It's not a mistake. It's a responsibility. Stop trying to move the goalpost.
I'm not moving the goalpost. I'm asking
Stop
a question.
using different words. I'm giving you the word responsibility.
So it's their responsibility that they're sad.
They have a shared responsibility in why they feel sad in that moment. Absolutely.
They have a shared responsibility that their mom died. I just want to get clarification on that.
No, they don't have a shared responsibility that their mom died. They have a shared responsibility of feeling hurt because somebody brought up their mother after their mother had just died and the other person wasn't aware of it.
And
Hey, can I ask? I just want to ask a point of clarification. How is it that how is it that either party hasn't made a mistake if there's a shared responsibility between the two of them?
Because mistakes are shortcomings. Mistakes are things that are causing us to behave poorly in a number of different ways. I don't think mentioning somebody's mother because you didn't know she was dead is a mistake or a failure.
Well, right, but you just. And
I don't think.
Wait a minute. You just used the two terms synonymously, and then say it's not. Yes, you said mistakes are shortcomings.
Okay, but those don't have anything to do with responsibility.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted.
When I'm talking about shared responsibility, I'm specifically saying that, how you perceive things. Like when my grandmother died, nobody is responsible for the pain that I feel. I am responsible in how I perceive my grandmother's death. And I perceive my grandmother's death, obviously, because of all the programming that went into me for how I perceive death as a whole now.
So, if someone goes out and gets raped, they have a shared responsibility with the rapist over how they feel.
I'm not going to have a conversation about rape. It's just going to trigger the entire audience in a negative way. This follows from what you're saying, or it doesn't. I think it's unhealthy.
If you're having a guttural reaction here, if you're having a hold on, I'm sorry, Messenger, but if you're having a guttural reaction here, where you think that it's atrocious to say that a rape victim has a shared responsibility with her rapist over her emotions.
I never said that.
Okay, so you don't believe there's a shared responsibility then?
I'm not going to have the conversation about rape.
Okay.
Because I think it's manipulative and it's trying to win points with the audience and get them enraged. And I think that, trying to harm people in that way and make them or, potentially put them out there to where they would get triggered by that is very unhealthy and irresponsible of you.
Oh, of me. Okay. Yeah. It's irresponsible for me to say that, someone who believes that they're
going on about it, that's cool.
A shared responsibility.
Yeah,
that's fine.
If you're trying to generate emotional responses to people in negative and unhealthy ways, I think you're an assailant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
So, let's go with
that.
Hold on. Let's check it out. I think that much like when Drag intervened earlier, I think we're down a rabbit hole that we've been down a while, and we're kind of going in circles and everything. So I just want to ask Messenger, is there any other points like about the ontology of your beliefs that in your God that you wanted to make and get Socka's thoughts on or rebuttal to?
Well, I don't think the Bible is the true, inspired, infallible Word of God. I think that Christians that hold to that model or viewpoint have made the Bible an idol. I don't believe that all the times that the Hebrew people attributed responsibility to God for decisions they made were God's doing. I think it was their own, and they put that responsibility on God to basically either alleviate their own responsibility for it or to create fear in their perhaps enemies. I believe that the teachings of Jesus are awesome and perfect. I think that his apostles' interpretations of certain things, including his death, making it a martyrdom and an atonement for sin, were incorrect.
Okay, well, let me try to do like a quick summary here. just for your God. You believe a God exists, and that God is either material or immaterial. That God
he's not immaterial.
Oh, it's okay. The God's not immaterial, so the God is purely material.
Let him describe your God, and then you can correct him on whatever he gets wrong. So go ahead,
Okay.
Socka.
Okay, so you believe your God is some material entity which created humans in their image and is perfectly has perfect knowledge when it comes to how humans interact with each other. Is that right so far?
I missed the last point because I was reading Dreg's comment. If you just give me the last point, I'll be able to.
So this being is also perfect in the way that it interacts with humans.
Yes.
Okay. Did this God interact with humans before he created them, or with anything before he created them? Other gods, perhaps?
Did you just ask if God interacted with humans before he created them?
Well, I'm trying to understand, like, how is it that the God knows what a perfect interaction is? Is a perfect interaction good because it's just how he acts?
Well, I look at the story in Genesis where it says, God said, let us make mankind in our image and likeness. Let them rule over the earth and have dominion over it. So when they created us, meaning God and whoever else was the we around him, when he was addressing an audience, says, let us create mankind. So God did create mankind in his image and likeness and gave them authority and put them in the garden, blah, 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 and said, rule. So that's why I don't think God interferes with that authority and dominion. Because if something grants us as human beings authority and dominion, and then did anything to interfere with said authority and dominion, therefore we would no longer have said authority and dominion, which we clearly still do as a species on this planet.
How do we have authority and dominion?
Because we rule the planet. We have authority and dominion over all other things that exist on this planet.
Have you ever tried to fight a polar bear?
If I had a gun, I'd win.
I think the question is, did he ever fuck a polar bear?
Do you think a polar bear recognizes your authority even if you have a gun?
I don't think polar bears even know what the fuck authority means.
Okay, so how do you have dominion over something that doesn't recognize authority?
Because you impose that authority and you subdue it.
So you think authority just has to do with subduing something?
Dominion and subduing have exactly the same thing about each other. One's an action and the other one is a noun.
So do you think if you have a gun, you think you could subdue a polar bear?
For sure. Or a cage.
And just put it, and you think it's subdued then? Like you can go in there, you break its spirit?
No, I'm not talking. I don't think that having dominion over something means that you break its spirit. That's just like, again, moving the goalpost.
No, it's not moving the goalposts. Okay, it's trying to understand. No, okay, okay. Listen, that's not what moving the goalpost is.
But you keep changing. I said dominion is that we're ruling over the planet. Do you think that?
I'm asking you how it is. So let's follow through the path here. Okay, you said that we're ruling over the planet. I asked how we're ruling over it. Then you said we have dominion over things. I'm like, well, do we have dominion over a polar bear? Can you shoot a polar bear? Like how do you have dominion over a polar bear? And you said, well, I can with a gun. You can shoot it. It's just like, okay, well, that's not really dominion. That's not really what it means to rule something. Okay, the fact that are you just saying that that which is like an apex predator has dominion? Like that's it? Like you're speaking like this really kind of vacuous terms here. I'm trying to understand what you understand this dominion to be. Like where does it come, and how do you act? How do you act upon this authority? How is this recognized by things out there? Because I'm not sure about you, but you go swimming in like a Great Barrier Reef, or go up north and play with some polar bears, or into the savannah with some lions. I don't think they give two fucks about your dominion.
I didn't say that they respected the dominion, but we have the authority and dominion to rule over this planet because of how we were designed.
No, we have the force. You're just talking about force then. Like the fact that we, like I said, apex predators doesn't make you to have a dominion over something.
So you don't believe that human beings have a dominion is what you're trying to tell me?
I'm saying that I'm trying to get your perspective. The only thing that you can link dominion to is force. The fact that we can kill things. The fact that we have tools that we can kill things somehow dominion. Like that just seems ridiculous.
Okay, I'm glad it seems ridiculous to you. Well, I think human beings have authority and dominion, and I think most human beings would understand that human beings indeed rule over this planet.
Because they have guns.
Because we have guns, because we have walls, because we have cages, because we can do whatever we want with animals, pretty much.
Technically, I mean, if we actually ruled over the planet, we wouldn't need walls, but that's fine.
No, well, people are trying to rule over each other, so that's why there's walls.
Like if you're saying that, like you know, like a wall keeps out the things that, you know, challenge you. Okay, if you have dominion, there would be nothing that would be challenging you.
Oh, so you're looking at it as an omnipotent type of dominion?
No, not saying omnipotent.
Are you sure you're not a theist?
Yeah, no, I don't believe in God. That's
okay, because some of the things that you claim seem to be very Christianese.
No, what I'm asking is, see, here's the problem, Messenger, is that you're trying to put out this idea like you have some type of enlightened, like well thought out concept of God, you know. That,
no, I didn't. But it's, you asked me what I believed, and I told you. I didn't act like
you seem to be falling. You seem to be falling down like the same type of like rabbit holes that every other does. You just deny it. So
no.
Anyway, so we go over this dominion thing. So you think dominion just, you know, comes down to force, the fact that you can assert force and you can kill things, that therefore you have dominion.
If you'd like to call dominion force, why do we have force? We have force over the planet.
You have force?
I don't know, that was your words.
I mean, that's what you're saying.
Like,
there's no authority, there's no respect. It's just
how would you describe human beings' place on Earth?
We're just part of the ecosystems. We're just part of the environment. You know, like
are we the dominant?
You know, sometimes sometimes you know,
are we the
you
dominant
kill sharks?
Species?
Sometimes shark kills man.
Are we the dominant species on the planet?
I mean, technically, I would say that there's like, what do you mean by dominant? Like, just in the fact that we can kill everything?
However you define dominant, do you believe human beings are the dominant species on the planet?
I don't think that dominant's a good measure. Like, I'm trying to understand what you mean by dominant. So by your definition of dominant, you know, you just talk about the ability to have force to kill things. In which case, I'm pretty sure that there are strains of, you know, bacteria or viruses that you know, would have dominion over us.
So you don't believe human beings are the dominant species on the planet?
It depends where you are, what the environment is. Like I said, sometimes man kills shark, sometimes shark kills man.
Sometimes you eat the bar, and sometimes the bar eats you. Sorry, I just had to say that. Can I ask,
if a nuclear winter occurs, you know, it's not going to be the humans that are going to be surviving it.
Can I just ask a question of clarification? So, like, now, you guys were both talking about dominion and all that. So, if you fuck a polar bear, do you have dominion over the polar bear?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, just checking. Messenger, you don't have a response, an answer to that question?
No, I'm good.
I was just fucking being an asshole.
All right. So we have dominion. Okay, so we have this God who is material, but yet created humans. How did he create humans? Like, we're talking about laboratory science, magic?
I would assume it's through some type of genetic engineering.
Okay, so you're actually in, like, you know, closer to the Richard Madsen, you know, boat of, you know, that by God you're just talking about super intelligent alien species.
I don't know if it's an alien species or not. I mean, I don't.
Are they from Earth? Are they from Earth?
Originally,
did they live on Earth before us?
I don't think so.
Okay, then that makes them an alien.
Okay, then they're an alien.
Okay, so you believe in an alien gods, is what you're saying.
Well, based on your definition, that's what I got to go with.
Okay, and is it a species of alien gods or a singular alien god?
I don't know.
If it knows, if this thing, do you care? Do you think that and go back to the example of like sharks? You know, there's a species of sharks out there that give no credence to each other. You know, they copulate through you know, forced sex. They kill each other all the time. You know, they're solo species. In fact, we see this within solo species very no real kind of, there's with no social order. There's no like even kind of remnants of like any type of like primitive form of ethics between these creatures. They don't care about it because social interactions is not something that concerns them. Okay, so the question about like we can view different kind of like almost like I said, like kind of like these ethical frameworks, or they get at least like organizations or social orders within some animals out there, but it's completely deprived in other, generally the ones that are solo. So in order for for this some perfect being to care or value the human interaction, we'd assume that it would have to be like a social creature of some sort, wouldn't it?
I'm just like letting you ramble on because you're just going on and on and on, and I don't understand why.
Well, wait a minute. What do you mean? He just paused and threw it to you, and
you don't have to bet. You don't have to defend him. Let him speak, John.
I'm not defending. He stopped talking to let you talk. And the first
I know what he did.
Out of your mouth that he's but the first word out of your mouth that he just wants to ramble on and on. And I mean,
no, I didn't say he wants to. I said he's just rambling on. And I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay, so less editorializing, and if there was a question or a statement that was made but no question posed, right, then let's try to address that. Then just offer inane comments about people speaking. So does Socka need to rephrase what he said? Does he need to ask you a direct question?
I'll try to listen to what he's saying instead of reading the comments now, because like I said, it's just getting into this big word salad about his understanding of my understanding, and he doesn't want to listen to what my understanding was. So I'm just letting him drone on about what he thinks is, because it's pointless, because he's not trying to go, gee, where's Messenger coming from? And then I'm going to rebut that. He's trying to tie me into a Christian theology that he understands that he easily rebuts.
Oh, no. We're far out of the ballpark from Christian theology now. So anyway,
let me ask you, Messenger, do you feel as if we've gotten to a point where there's no point in continuing on with the discussion? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm trying to reel it back in to have some type of meaningful conversation or dialogue back and forth.
Okay, right. So let me try to rephrase this then. The emphasis that we put on social interactions derives from the value that we put in the maintaining a certain social order. Was that word salad to you, or do you agree with that?
What's the point that you're trying to make about that? Why are you sitting there talking about social order? We haven't been talking about social order the whole time. Why are you bringing that up? Are you just trying to, share your vast knowledge and understanding things from a philosophical viewpoint? We've heard your viewpoint on things. Do you want to understand mine?
Okay.
No, I asked you a question.
Let me ask that a question.
I said, do you want to understand my theological viewpoint?
Your theological viewpoint is nonsensical.
How do you know? You don't know what it is.
Well, because we're diving into it piece by piece.
No.
So
you're
right
not,
now, the first. Hold on a second.
No,
hold on a second. Let me finish this point. Okay. We're going to this point by point. So we've now moved on. Messenger, come on.
That's the problem.
Grow up.
I'm not the one that has the problem with it. It's you.
All right. So we're talking about the characteristics of your God now, because now we've moved out of any type of theological discussion, and now we're just talking about aliens. Okay.
No, we're not.
So you have. Okay. Messenger, are your gods material or immaterial?
I believe that God is like our image and likeness in some way. Do I know exactly what it is? No, but I believe.
So you don't. The last time I asked you this question, I asked you don't know if your God's material or immaterial, and you said material. You were quite specific to point out that your God was material. Are you walking that back now?
Give me an explanation why. Do you want to hear the explanation that supports that thing?
Well, because you have no evidence of anything immaterial with a cognition existing.
To have a belief, one does not need evidence. To have a belief, one takes evidence and then derives a theory based on that evidence that's presented.
Okay. So, I mean, let's rewind 5 minutes. Do you believe your God is material or immaterial? Or can your God be material or immaterial?
I told you we were created in his image and likeness. Doesn't that answer your question?
So you think God's material? Okay. All right. And you think that God created us in some type of laboratory?
I don't know.
You said it wasn't magic.
I don't know if it's a laboratory. I just said I believe that we're somehow genetically engineered. That's what makes the most sense to me.
How about this one? Natural method, or sorry, like artificial method or magical method?
Well, it's not magical. I don't believe anything's magical.
Okay. So some type of artificial, natural explanation from these material gods that didn't pre-exist on Earth, from somewhere else. Do they live outside of the universe?
I would say no.
Okay, so another part of the universe, not from Earth. They're aliens. Okay, so let's just, instead of just blowing up over me calling your god aliens again, you've just defined your god as the colloquial understanding of what an alien is.
Sure, he could be, and I say could be alien.
Okay, so your god could be an alien. Glad that we had to walk that back 5 minutes to get to the same
I
point.
said that because I said I don't know if he was originally from the planet. I said I don't believe he is, but I don't know. He could be.
Okay, so now we go back to the point. Is one god or is it multiple gods? Is it a species of god? Because I'm kind of curious in this one. Because for a perfect being to value any type of interactions between different moral agents, they'd have to have some type of value for that social group. So for your God to have these perfect emotions, this perfect understanding of interactions, and to follow through in such a way that we can say that these every single choice or interaction it makes is perfect, it would have to have a certain value in some type of social order.
So I would say that yes, God has a perfect state of being and a perfect state of feeling.
Okay. Now, does this God value these like the social group, like the interactions it had?
What do you mean by value it?
Well, because like I said, we go back to the examples that animals that don't live in social groups don't value the interactions they have with other members of their species. Okay, so in order, it doesn't mean that they're we would say that these things are amoral creatures, So even so with humans, then humans will value the social group, which is how which is why we take that we consider ourselves moral agents. If we didn't care for the social group, we'd be no different than just animals just killing and eating members of its own species.
Well, so that's your best understanding of it.
No, what's my understanding of this? Are you saying that animals that don't value the group can still make ethical decisions regarding members of their group?
I don't think that animals can think and reason in the same way that human beings can. And I think that drawing a correlation to us and animals doesn't make much sense, because you're trying to understand a human being from an animal's standpoint or viewpoint. And you're attributing human factors and conditions within their state of being that they just don't have, because I'm sorry, they don't think and reason the way that we do. They act and behave.
We have ample evidence of animals that live in social groups valuing members of their social group.
I'm not saying that they have an inability in some ways, like if you take chimpanzee or apes for interaction, or more intelligent species that are aquatic, like dolphins or whales. But when you're talking about humans, let's keep it on the topic of humans.
The point is that there's this relation. It has to do with the relation between being creatures of moral value, creatures of moral agency, and whether or not there exists a social group for these creatures. Okay, so like I said, well, the point is then that it would follow from that an alien, that would create us, and care and have these perfect intuitions about interactions amongst people of its social group, they would have to have a value in that, which means that if they have a value in that, that value only comes from being a result of a group themselves.
So do you believe that this ancient alien astronaut theory that you have about what you believe that I think is incapable of having that?
Well, it would indicate that it's not a alien god, it's a species of alien gods.
So do you think it's possible that there's a species of alien gods
that created us inside of a laboratory and can guide perfect interactions?
No, I'm saying, do you believe that we could have been genetically engineered by an alien?
I think it's highly unlikely.
What's that?
It's highly unlikely.
As evidenced by what?
Well, the fact that we can, I mean, this is more in Greg's territory here, but to get where we are now, okay, is the result of millions of years of evolution, from a simple cell organism to where we are now.
There's no evidence of that. There's just speculation based on the limited evidence that is existing.
Are you saying that we were created in human form by aliens?
I'm saying that what they took.
No. I'm a simple question. Were we created in human form?
I'm not on trial. I can respond how I want to respond.
Okay, go for it. Let's hear this one.
So I believe, and again, belief, not proof, not evidence, that we were genetically engineered over a period of time. In the first time that God spliced or created a humanoid, he spliced it with something else that was existing here on Earth already, and let that evolve and develop over a period of time, and then took that species and spliced it, and then took a next species and spliced it, and then did so over a period of time until it came to, now I'm creating something in our image and likeness that has the capability and capacity to rule here on Earth.
So you're saying that the idea that of creatures evolving based on natural selection is less likely than alien god species coming to Earth and doing genetic engineering and splicing animals together over long periods of time.
It's not splicing animals together. It's splicing a specific species of animals over an evolved period of time to be more like their image and likeness because they weren't in the beginning. And yes, I do believe that's more probable than an evolution, that evolution can never predict or match. They can't say, gee, how did we get from Neanderthal man to Cro-Magnon man? How did we get from Cro-Magnon man to Homo erectus? How do we get to Homo erectus to Homo sapien? They don't have the links. There's no evidentiary or evolutionary path that shows that development. They're very distinct from one another. So there's more understanding that it could come from genetic engineering than it ever would come from, gee, we just evolved that way over millions of years, especially when you throw things in like language and the development of language. And I know that nobody in here is a linguist, so we can't even have that conversation.
So do you believe that aliens have been coming to Earth over, what's your time frame on this? Just out of curiosity. Billion years?
I don't have
500 million?
I don't have a time frame, and I think it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Well, it would have to be a very long period of time because we can.
Whatever period of time that we asked best guessed through C14 dating can come up with.
Well, C14, carbon-14 dating only, goes back, like 20,000 years?
20 to 50 at the most.
Yeah, there's other radiometric dating that dates animals and fossils, fossils found in different layers much older than that.
Messenger, are you saying that you don't believe any of the? Are you saying that you don't believe any of the claims of evolution?
Well, I do believe in a process of evolution, but I don't believe in that we all evolved from a single cell organism. I just don't.
Just
because
for
it's more like
clarification, there's a conflation between abiogenesis and biological evolution here, so that's probably where the issue is.
Does anybody else have their PhD that we can talk to?
No, you don't need a PhD to understand basic biology. This is stuff that we teach undergrads in like the first week.
What do you mean we teach undergrads? You're not qualified to teach undergrads.
I didn't know that you were my PI.
I'm not your PI, but I know what your credentials are. You're a bachelor level student.
Okay, so how about you stay in your field before you start talking about who knows what and who can teach what?
I'm just making a general observation based on my understanding of education.
Make an observation that you stay in your field since you don't know the difference between abiogenesis and evolution. All right?
And neither do you.
Okay.
What? Now wait a minute.
You want me to take the opinion of somebody who's in their bachelor's degree in their final semester of their senior year?
A personal thing, Messenger. You stay in your lane.
It has nothing to do with staying in my lane. I would say it if it was somebody in the infield.
That's the topic with Socka, okay? So all I did was say there's a conflation between topics, and that's it, right? That it wasn't a slight against you. If you didn't understand it, then don't speak on it. It's really simple. So stick to the things that you think that you know from the discourse.
Hey, can we pick those babies up? I'm in the middle of this.
All right, so this is probably a good time to go ahead and bring it to a close. It's probably at an impasse anyway.
Well, I mean, the only part from here would be
so there's no need for an impasse.
It's the principle of parsimony now, where it's like, you take a look at the two competing kind of like hypotheses that are going to go out here, and well, there's one that I mean, the way that we're going to like that this conversation is going to go here is that we have evidence for divergence of species over kind of a very long period of time. So the diversity of life can be kind of tracked back, and we can see how creatures have changed to get where they are now through looking at the history of things like fossil records, and we can also track this through things like DNA. There's like entire like the branches of phylogeny as well that work to kind of like kind of paint like a whole picture of this. So several different fields of science that kind of work in tracing all this flood back, as well as we have the time scale for things like geology. Okay, so if what Messenger is saying here is that the alien god species has been coming in, interacting, or splicing stuff throughout different periods of time. Well, we can take a look at that claim right there. So if evolution doesn't work at all, that would mean that the divergence of life to get to where we are now, we'd have to trace this back probably 350, 400 million years of alien god species coming and making these alterations throughout all of history. If they came here to pre-existing life, like he's also claimed, which says that maybe only 5 to 10 million years ago, they'd have to come and do some genetic splicing and come up with humans from some of the species already here. But that would also make you, assume that the process of evolution has gotten us so far over the other several hundred million years. So we're left with two options then on the table, which is one that you've had this, that evolution doesn't work at all, which means that the divergence of life from simple cell organisms to where we are now was completely a process that was guided through, alien interference, or that evolution worked up to a point when aliens needed to come down and, splice genes and get humans to where they are now. But that would also assume then that evolution worked for the other several hundred million years, which would mean that one we can kind of rule out through, Occam's razor is not making sense, because if evolution's working up to this point, there's really no need for the alien interference at that other point. But if the other scale problem is that we have to go back to like the full version that we have, like this interference from beginning to end, again, principle of parsimony means that the chances are that an alien species interaction that's over hundreds of million years, making millions of small genetic changes to give us the type of diversity of life that we see right now, is highly unlikely. So both of these scenarios being put forward are terrible, as an explanation, in compared to just saying that there's a naturalistic explanation that doesn't have to appeal to aliens coming and interacting for hundreds of millions of years.
Any response, Messenger?
Yeah, give me a second.
I'm looking for that super chat too. I missed it. I'm trying.
I think there was more than one super chat, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I thought I saw a couple too there, Drag. I think, isn't it hard sometimes to access like the beginning of the chat once you've moved so far?
Yeah, it's whoever did it a while back. It's gone. Because I scrolled all the way up and I can't find it. I'm just going to the manager and read them off.
Well, look, since you haven't responded yet, I want to get a point of clarification from you, Messenger, because I know fuck all about biology, but I still understand how evolution works without having very little knowledge about biology. But you said something a few moments ago that I don't understand, and maybe I didn't hear you right. But were you claiming that, and forget about biology in any field, were you claiming that a bachelor level education is incapable of teaching a first year student anything?
No, I mean, there's student teachers all the time. So I'm not referring to that. What I'm saying is that if you're qualified to teach a college, like bachelor level program, you have to have at least a master's degree.
Well, right, but that's not what Drag said, though. He talked about, he was talking about like knowledge that you would be imparting on like a first year student. I think he said first, like somebody,
I believe Drag has enough information in his education to teach a first year student, which is basically people getting their gen eds. I'm sure he can probably tutor people in his junior and senior level coursework because of the passion that he has for the field that he's in and the efforts that he puts into learning. But I don't think it makes him a master level theorist.
Well, right, but I mean, he didn't claim that though. That's why I was asking you to clarify.
But I hear at times, and I don't want to get into this because it's getting again away from the conversation. The issue I have with people in this community or other communities, Christian communities, is people pontificating themselves as an expert, even though they say, "Oh, I'm not the expert," but when they use terms like "we this" and "we that," and they're not part of that professional community, they probably shouldn't use the "we" terms.
Well,
they could sit there, they could articulate things and say, "Hey, here's what the experts are saying. Here's what the experts hold to be true," and I agree with it.
Okay, but hold on. Let, before you go on too far. Okay, here's how it went down, and maybe I got it wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong, but when Drag used the word "we," you guys were speaking about first year students, and he had mentioned how rudimentary some of the points were that you, and in his opinion, that you weren't seeming to understand. I don't know enough about it to know whether he was right about that or not. And he made the comment that that's the stuff we teach like a student in their first few weeks. And he used the word "we," and you called him out on that. And now you just got done saying a moment ago that a bachelor level student certainly could teach a first year student, or maybe even a second or third year student. So
and it's not teaching; they couldn't teach them professionally.
He was a teacher. He was a teacher's assistant, though, and they teach. Teachers' assistants teach.
There's no teacher assistants at the bachelor level in general. Okay, there just isn't. There's tutors. And a teacher assistant doesn't teach the class. They just don't.
Well,
I have my bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree, and I could have two if I go take two more courses. I know what the academic and education process is in the level of college, whether it be at the associate, bachelor's, master's, or doctoral level. I know enough about education to say who can and can't teach people.
Fair enough.
So I'm not saying that he doesn't have knowledge enough to share information. I think he does. But I think at times when people carry themselves and use the term "we," they're pulling themselves off as an expert, even if they hold the disclaimer at the end of it going, "But I'm not the expert, do the research for yourself."
Well, I mean, and again, this could just be my incorrect understanding of, but like Socka's talked before about linguistic presuppositions. Okay, when we communicate with people, there's certain presuppositions you have to understand what someone's communicating to. So when
I have an entire teaching over on Unplug about communication. Go check it out and tell me how it's wrong.
Okay, well, but I'm not claiming anything that you have in this wrong. I'm just trying to make this point that when leading up to the statement that began with "we," he had made a statement about students in their first few weeks of college.
I'm not talking about tonight with the "we." I'm talking about many different chats, John.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not talking about it in this specific moment.
Okay.
In this specific moment when he was like talking about the teachers, I was just saying you're not credentialed to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Like a
concept, but that's fine.
If I did, then I apologize for that.
Okay, well, I'll just let you know. So someone is asking, ask Messenger if he employs somatic experiencing, which is used for PTSD therapy as an alternative. The language he uses hints to that.
No, I don't think that's a good way to deal with PTSD. I don't.
Okay,
That's
so
my
the answer
answer.
is no to that. So the other one's Dragnet. I also asked if he subscribes to Molinism.
It's Molinism.
Is it Molinism? Okay,
Remember,
Molinism.
I can't remember what Molinism is. I remember reading about the term at some point. I don't remember what Molinism is. My guess is I probably don't subscribe to it.
Okay, so you're not a Molinist.
I don't know. I know I wouldn't call myself that. So my guess is I don't ascribe to it. I remember having to look it up when somebody brought it up, some conversation a long time ago, or people were talking about it. You want to look it up real quick and see what it is? I don't care.
Do feel free.
No, you don't subscribe to Molinism.
Do you want to give a brief description of it, Socka, so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Okay, so it's just
I've
that
I've got it right here on Google.
Yeah, so
if you want me to read the Google definition.
Okay,
that's cool. Either way.
Molinism, named after 16th century Spanish Jesuit theologian Luis de Molina, is a view about the providence of God in light of human free will. Prominent contemporary Molinists are William Lane Craig, Alvin Plantinga, Alfred Freddoso, Thomas Flint, Kenneth Keeley, and David Armstrong. If that gives you any context, know any of their.
No Kierkegaard? Oh.
Well, it said more. It said more. That was just the synopsis that came up on the first page. I didn't click on the Wikipedia. So here
it has to do with the so the reason why I say that he doesn't subscribe to this, because this is actually what I was trying to get him to clarify earlier, instead of just asking him that question, whether he was a Molinist or not. But it has to do with the degrees of knowledge in which God has. So it still starts off the assumption that God is omniscient, but omniscient is defined through different types of knowledge that God has, so mainly being the natural knowledge, free knowledge, and middle knowledge. And those are just knowledge, but it encompasses all. So, I mean, it would still be a position where you'd have to subscribe to some type of omniscience. But I can understand why the Holy would ask that, but what's missing from that within Messenger's viewpoint is the middle knowledge. It started off earlier that he was talking about middle knowledge, or the what you would describe as the knowledge of counterfactuals, but Messenger seems to deny that now.
All right, someone said, ask him if I guess Messenger. Ask Messenger if God knows what God doesn't know.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, so I mean, like, this has definitely been enlightening. I'll say that much. But there's still a lot of problems within your. I am hard pressed to call it a theological view at this point in time, because this is the same point to the discussion I got to with Richard Manson, where we're not talking about a God anymore. We're not talking about any type of real like discussion outside of just like just types of aliens, and whether or not aliens are doing things are somehow responsible for us being here. It's kind of a this is a weird view, obviously. But like so within this framework, there's still going to be a lot of problems that derive from this. Is that to describe some being as just saying that whatever they do is perfect, that they can only act in this perfect way. It's just a define what this creature does is perfect. You make perfect synonymous with what this creature does. If something was to make a mistake, well, this creature can't make a mistake. So a mistake would be what, to describe what this creature doesn't do. Now these are just non-reductionist definitions. They don't really tell you much about what it means to be perfect, or what it means to act in a good way, or, it doesn't tell you about what interactions are preferred or anything like that. All it does is just define, interactions as right or wrong, dependent on just what this hypothetical being would do. Now, Is there anything you disagree with on that?
I don't think so in terms of what you're trying to describe.
Like, you don't disagree with that?
I think that you're right that we're not going to get anywhere because I don't hold to the same viewpoint as a lot of people on earth that hold to theistic beliefs hold to in terms of how they view and define the God that they believe in. You know,
Yeah, but it's not really a theistic belief. I think that's your first problem right there.
It gets to like I said,
there's nothing theological about this.
The reason that I still hold to a theistic belief, I explained in the very beginning, because of the understanding for how and why we are the way we are as human beings. And if you ever would like to have a conversation about that, your philosophical viewpoint versus my psychological and clinical counseling viewpoint, I'd love to have that conversation.
Because you don't have a psychological viewpoint. No, I do. Like, that's a problem. You don't.
Oh, I really do.
What you have is you have an assertion based off nothing at all. See, if I was to actually dive into why it is that humans behave the way that they do, or why it is that we value things within a social group, is that I could point to evolution. I could point to evolutionary pressures. I could point to our nature as rational beings to come together and to form social contracts in which we can kind of come up with this concept of how best to live within social groups. I could point to these things that are completely intuitive and make sense, and we have evidence for this. You don't have a psychological reason. You say that you have this plea that what your viewpoint is that there is a standard of perfection that was bestowed to us by some type of alien being.
I didn't say there was a standard.
When you talk about perfection, are you saying that when you talk about the way that we have to, when you talk about the way that we should emulate our lives, we should emulate our life in a way that is in line with these things. That is a standard that you are proposing.
I don't say anything about should. I don't say we should. I said we have.
You say that we should.
Do you want to hear what I have to say, or do you want to just keep asserting things that are incorrect?
Okay. I mean, go for it. And tell me how. Tell me is that you're not telling that we should live this way, or that we have but how we should live this way.
We have the ability as human beings to become healthier and better versions of ourselves, reaching and attaining, hopefully at some point, a perfected state of being.
Who cares? So why do we care about that?
We care about that because it's possible and it's a better way of life if we do these things.
Why should I care about a better way of life?
Because it eliminates crime. It eliminates poverty. It eliminates poor behavior and malicious treatment of one another.
Why should I care about that stuff?
Because it affects you in negative ways.
Does it? I mean, yeah. I get to do that stuff too, doesn't it?
Because your stress levels, because your anger levels all create cortisol. Cortisol kills you over a period of time. And along with the smoking, probably killing you quicker.
Right.
So shortening your lifespan.
Supreme Leader Steve wants me to read. Messenger, what school and degree do you have?
I already listed the degrees. I'm not listing the school that I attended. I'm not putting that out there.
Okay. So
I have 2 degrees. I have a BS and I have an MS. They're from an regionally accredited school, both of them. And the MS in clinical counseling I did is KCREP accredited.
Cool. So the point is that you're trying to when I said that we're trying to talk about how we should live our life, and then you said, well, I'm not telling people how they should live their life, but then you put forward an argument for why we should do this and live our life this way.
You asked what the benefits were, so I'm not saying you should, as in a command or a request. I'm saying you have the ability to, and that it would be beneficial. Like if you can't say, why should I listen? Don't ask me why you should listen. I'm asking you, what would you benefit from learning from what I have to teach? A better state of being and a better life.
You're saying these things that we value?
I would think so. I think most human beings do value those things.
Okay, but
human beings prioritize and make time for things based on 3 categories, and that's it. I mean, do you want to know how and why you make the decisions you do and the time and the priorities that you do for the things you do? Because they're broken down. They're broken. No, all right. Tell me the 3 things.
I do.
Tell me
No,
the
no,
three things.
it's not three things. No, I'm not talking about your weird theory there. But
It isn't a weird theory. How about if I just tell you, so then everybody can determine how
I know
weird
why
it is.
I do things.
Okay, why do you do things? What determines how you prioritize your time?
Because we know what the counter viewpoint is. Okay, so we can take a look at things as like a state of nature. We can look at this. No desire to be in any type of social group whatsoever. That every single creature is out there for themselves. That it's literally like a dog eat dog world out there. So to speak.
How can people take that
through
statement
this life?
to make their life better?
Hold on. So that you live through this life that in a way that you're constantly scared, constantly looking over your shoulder. That you have to guard any possessions that you do have because people can just freely come take it. If they want it, they're just going to kill you. If things want to copulate, they're just going to, forcefully, rape you. That this is the state of the world that we would live in a place with, complete and absolute kind of anarchy, no rules, no structure. Now, luckily for humans, as humans are rational creatures, and that we recognize through a sense of self-preservation that the best way that we can live our lives is to band up into social groups and put forward some type of structure in place that we can, work towards individual rights that we can kind of protect as part of that group. So we form these social contracts, and these social contracts are only as beneficial as long as they guarantee that people can live lives that are more or less free of any type of pain or suffering. On the most part, understanding that there is going to be a certain amount of pain and suffering that does come as just a natural byproduct of life, but we work to kind of minimize these things. And so within the social contract, we sacrifice certain freedoms and rights that we do have in order for us to live in this society in which we will guarantee that we're not going to kill our neighbor as long as that there is that rationalization and that guarantee that it's not going to be reciprocated back onto you.
There's probably very few people that you can have that type of conversation with and then extrapolate any type of meaningful thing for their own life. You realize that, right? Like none of that stuff that you just said helps somebody be able to apply that in their day-to-day life to make their life better.
Well, the question wasn't about whether or not somebody can apply this in their day-to-day life.
People can understand
that's going to the position that you said before, where you're saying that people shouldn't do things.
If people can understand how and why they prioritize time, then they can take ownership of what they do in each and every moment. But if they don't understand the things that are driving them to make time for things or prioritizing their time, then they can never understand what's causing it. And certainly the whole litany of stuff that you were just educating us on why people make time for stuff doesn't have any value or applicable practice in anybody's life. But what I would offer in 3 easy, understandable ways would, but you didn't want to hear it.
Okay, well, hold on for a second.
The question was whether or not I could explain how these things are that we act in this way. And I explained how it is that we act in this way.
We prioritize what we make time for. That's what I said.
So,
and for that, it was pretty...
Gentlemen, we're at the 2 hours. I'm going to go the fuck to sleep. So, I'll give both of you plenty of time to plug your channels, say your final words, and I'm going to end this motherfucker, and I'm going to go to sleep. But before we do that, I'm letting the Holy Spackle have the last question. I have no idea what the fuck this is. She wants me to ask Messenger, is he or has he been affiliated with the Stars Edge International? I have no idea what that is.
I don't know what it is either. So the answer is no.
So that's a no. Okay. All right.
Hey, can I just say too, if anybody's interested in an after show, we could have it on my channel.
Yeah, feel free. Go ahead and set it up now, John, and go ahead and put the.
Well, I want to find out whether they want to have one or not, but I'm sure Socka's game.
I'm sure lots of people would show up, John.
All right. Well, I'm just I'll remain here and do my shilling when they're done, and then I'll set it up. It'll probably start up like about 15 minutes after we end this. Then.
Cool.
Okay.
On the amateur conversationalist.
Yeah.
And I will. I'll put a link in the Dragoon chat on Drag server, and the first. There's a spot for the 2 gentlemen that are here right now, and that'll leave 3 spots left. So whoever gets to the link, 3 people to get to the link first.
Okay. So I want Messenger to go first, uninterrupted. Say what he has to say, plug his channel, explain his 3 points of success, or however he wants to frame it. So all the time. There you go.
Well, again, I run two channels. One is the Messenger Reveals, where I talk about theological and my theistic views and how and why mainstream modern day Christianity is failing, and if they would have a healthier understanding of the Bible or the healthier understandings of Jesus, that they could have a better relationship, not only with God, but also a better relationship with other human beings. Over on my Unplugged from Worldly Thinking channel, it's a secular view in terms of how to live a better life, how to become a better version of yourself. If you want to really challenge some of the things that I understand as far as psychology and clinical counseling, feel free to pop over to Unplugged from Worldly Thinking and criticize my teachings that I put out over there. And they're being released now every Friday. And as far as the 3 reasons why people make time for what they make time for, number 1 is physiological needs. That's what drives priority for time, that you need to breathe, drink, sleep, shit, excrete, have sex, and warmth. And then the second reason and the second priority that drives your ability to make time is what feels good. Human beings are pleasure-seeking individuals, and they draw to what feels good. So number 2 priority, doing things that feel good. And then, of course, number 3, avoiding displeasure. And everything that you do is prioritizing those things. So if you're not making time for something that you say is a priority, it has to be something that's pleasurable or avoiding displeasure to sit there and even get up in the categories of those things. Go ahead, Socka.
All right, Socka, go ahead.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, because that just opens up an entire new can of worms. Is that essentially what Messenger Reveals does, is in this great philosophy that he's just asserted out there, this great idea out there, is now he's just endorsing hedonism. Congratulations, guys! That's what motivates us. Hedonism.
Topic for the after show.
Jesus, it's just this weird, just, oh man, like we've moved from a theological discussion to one on ancient aliens. Screw the principle of parsimony, screw Occam's razor. We're just going to throw in the most convoluted, ridiculous, theories out there, and just just see what sticks there. Maybe in some type of way to push some type of, viewpoint that he has the answers to how people should interact with each other. It's not that hard of a question. It's not that, people have problems. People have issues. Human interaction is a complex thing. Okay. And any person that comes along and asserts that they have solutions to all these problems, is just peddling woo at this point in time. Okay. Other than that, I mean, this discussion was, pretty much a train wreck through and through. Like I said, I came in here to, talk about his viewpoints on God, and here's the thing: is that, Messenger Reveals he's not a theist. He doesn't believe in a God. Any seriously proposed God concept, he doesn't actually believe in any of that stuff. The ancient alien theories that have been, intervening with, human evolution for the last 350 million years. This is stuff for, the National Enquirer. This isn't an actual serious discussion. And that's it. That's all I got.
No true theist. No true theist argument, man. Sorry. All right. So I'm on a Raging Atheist channel on Wednesday nights, and I stream on Saturday nights on a channel I will not mention on this channel out of deference to the owner of the channel.
Say whatever you want, man.
I do a stream on Saturday nights on a Great Debate Community channel. And I have my own channel, The Amateur Conversationalist. Generally, I do streams on Sunday afternoons, one-on-ones. One of my last one-on-ones was with Dragda, and I get episode, not the last episode, but the one before that. I just posted on Twitter today a poll to come up with the name of my new podcast that will start next month. I'm on The Amateur Conversationalist, where twice monthly the podcast will be to bring ex-Muslims on and talk about their journey out of Islam. We're going to do an after show, as I said a few moments ago, on The Amateur Conversationalist, which if you get over to the Dragoon chat, within the first few minutes when we leave, I'll get a link over there, and the first 3 people to grab the link are welcome to come in.
All right, straight from the horse's mouth. All right, folks, thank y'all for watching. I'm going to go to sleep. That's $5 from Peter Wint. Messenger's message was a mess. Thank you for the alliteration and the $5. So on that note, y'all have a good night.